Okay, I think I'm going to get started, Renee, and we'll let other folks that are queuing up will still be able to come in, and folks that are just joining us will continue to join us. So, again, best of mornings. I can't say good morning because none of us have had a good morning in the last 75 days or so, but brighter days are hopefully upon us on the horizon. This is our second time to get ready to come back to where we all want to be webinar and common sense suggestions on reopening. And I really appreciate everybody's efforts through this whole process. And you know, again, if there's an industry I'd ever bet on getting through this, it's going to be restaurateurs. We're the most resilient group out there, and we will overcome. There's no question about it. In terms of approaching this, we turn to you know, a trusted friend and one that's pretty well known throughout this group. Chris Muller's had extensive experience in the restaurant business, which includes co-owning his first full-service restaurant with his chef partner, Brian Halloran, down on Centerville and Cape Cod. They've owned it now for 40 years ago, right? I think, and they've always been loyal MRA members. His second restaurant really, I would say, makes him uniquely qualified to talk about what we're going to be talking about today, because after just 8 months of operation in 2004, he had to close and then reopen 3 times over 6 weekends, including Labor Day, due to 3 hurricanes that historically hit the Orlando, Florida area. At the time, Chris obviously knows all too well, the SBA said the restaurant market would not recover for 6 to 8 months. More recently, he's served as professor of the practice and was the dean for the Boston University's School of Hospitality Administration. He received a doctorate from the School of Hotel Administration at Cornell University, kind of an important little school. And, you know, the most important thing is he served as a board of director for the Massachusetts Restaurant Association for a number of years. And he's been very, very helpful, often quoted, and as far as I'm concerned, someone uniquely qualified, as I said, having gone through a tragedy, not exactly like what we're in, but with similar occurrences. So with that, I'm going to prepare to turn it over to Chris. One thing I would like to point out, what we did find yesterday, when you have questions, please use the Q&A feature on your buttons. I think it'll be up top under, you know, you'll find it in the control panel, as opposed to the chat. So use the Q&A feature, not the chat. That's what we would ask to make this go as well as possible. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Muller and say thank you, Chris, for helping us, and look forward to a great conversation.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to the whole group, to Kerry and Steve and Renee. I'm going to apologize. I think because we all do this from home, they just started cutting the grass in the courtyard next to me. So if you hear a lawnmower in the back, it's not going to last forever. But I just I want to also thank everyone who's in the industry, the hundreds of thousands of people, because you're such an integral part of the absolute life of the Commonwealth. And without your efforts, this life here would not be the same. And so I come from your business. I think of myself as a restaurateur first, and I just really miss it. Having said that, we're going to talk today about the idea of the sort of common sense things. I'm going to guess that most of you have already done most of these things. But I remember when I was a young guy starting out, one of the things I found most comforting and surprising was when I thought I had to do something that I came up with on my own. finding out that a lot of other people had the same idea, maybe in a slightly different way, became a sort of confirmation that I was on the right track. So if I say something today that you already have heard, it's not because I'm suggesting I'm the only one who's thinking of this. It's just the opposite. What I do is I track many, many places to see what best practices are. It's part of my academic training. I've worked with a couple of national chains on their reopening projects, and I've tracked others, everything from restaurants to casinos, trying to make sure that we're all doing the same sort of things. And so when we say common sense, that's what this really is about. Keeping in mind that by my count, June 8th, Monday, June 8th is 11 days from now. And so it's time to get things moving. If you're going to be open, maybe not that Monday, but by the weekend, you want to start doing some project base. It's also, I just like to remind people that even though this might seem like a forest fire, just wiping out everything in its path, green shoots actually come out of the blackened trunks. It's not just new growth out from the forest floor, but trees start to rekindle, to renew. The forest recovers, and I think that's a really good model for what we're looking at. I also want to make sure that everyone is aware, and I'm sure that the nature of the people that are on this broadcast are aware, that the MRA has an enormous resource on their website for the COVID information section. This particular box on the website, this reopening resources, is especially valuable. And it looks like this. I know this is too hard to read from on a computer screen, but I just want to point out a couple of things. One is the second point, this partnership information. The NRA just posted brand new information on their ServSafe reopening guidelines. They came out yesterday, and some of you might not be aware that there's new ones, and I believe they're going to be posted on this site as well. But you also can get some great information from Ecolab, and some of the stuff that we can talk about in point 6. The Mass Design Group gave us a lot of really interesting information that they did from an architectural standpoint. So all of these sites, I think, are really valuable to reference and go back on, again, to confirm what you might already be doing. So for part 1, I'm going to try to get this into a couple of parts depending on how much time we have, but let's prepare this idea. It's always good to remember that from a sort of academic standpoint, restaurants are considered to be open systems. And an open system is one that, to survive, requires us to allow insiders to go out and outsiders to come in. So in our case, the customers come from outside and bring all of their stuff with them. We've always known that. That's why the restaurant industry is so difficult to be successful in, is that every customer brings a different demand structure. But also our employees come from the outside, and then all of them go back into the community. A restaurant is built on the idea, the concept of community. And literally, we stand with our arms outstretched in front of our places and say, come inside, let me make you whole. By that very act, the thing that makes us different than almost every other business is also what makes us so much at risk, and why we were the ones that suffered so much over the last 75 days. We always were concerned to make sure that our guests and our employees would not get ill in our places. This is just an extension of what we've always done. We just have to up the ante. We have to raise the level of our expectations. And I think that that's a reasonable thing for us to expect. So the first really simple idea is that you need to communicate. Communicate now and communicate then in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever it is that you're fully operational. And you also want to renegotiate now if you haven't already had some conversations. My friend Mary Connors, who teaches leadership, says that leadership is something that you need to share in times of crisis. And shared leadership means that you're also developing others, but it also means that you don't have to do this alone. And part of what we're getting at here is that we have to have a sense of transparency. The more transparent we have, the easier it's going to be to build trust. So we might almost fall into the category of becoming over communicators, sending out too much information, which is not a bad thing. The more we share, the faster we're going to build back that trust. I always like to operate my restaurants with the concept of no surprises. I wanted to know what was going to be the problem before it was going to happen. Surprises in our industry are not good. One of the things we have to now consider is that this is a time, if ever there was one, to have no surprises. Planning is what's going to get us through this. So communicating now, one of the things that we have now that I didn't have in 2004 is a really robust social media platform. If you're not comfortable with the way that we communicate in social media, I strongly recommend you go find a 20-year-old staff member who is really good at this. And if you can't find one of them, go to your high school dishwasher and make them a part of your media team. Somebody that is doing this really well all the time and understands the entire breadth of the way that we communicate to people now. And one of the things I'm going to suggest is that short digital messaging, creating 1.5 to 1 or 1 minute kinds of digital messages that can be posted on your Facebook, on your text messages that show you as being both sincere and ready to open. I'm going to suggest that both for your employees and your guests, and these are two different paths, that you create a short series, but at least one tour of the restaurant as from the inside and what it looks like now and the changes you've made so that the guests know before they get there what their expectations are. A good thing to do is have someone else with you walking with your mask on, but start at the front door and walk into the restaurant and show them what it's going to be like when they get there. Not long, very easy to do. We've all made selfies. We've all made videos on our cell phones. These do not have to be professional. They have to be sincere and real. And that transparency will help you communicate much faster than any other way we've ever done it in the past. So one of the ways to communicate now too is to create what I consider to be virtual teams. Assume that we've got a countdown. When I wrote this, I said we're going to have this 72, 48, 24-hour, 12-hour advance notice. The governor's given us a little bit more time. So we've got these 11 days. So we can stretch some of this out. But part of it is now is the time to create teams. I would suggest that you create a virtual team for people to help you with the staffing issues and making them equitable. And now is the time to ramp up your staffing issues. Reconnect with your staff, primarily to find out if they're interested in coming back and what it's going to take to get them back. The second is to simplify your menus and your recipes. Have a kitchen and dining room team and your marketing team, if you have one, talk about what the menu should actually be. Should it be daily specials? Should it be some of the more comfort food, your most popular items? You probably do not want to open with everything that you had before the crisis. This is the time to start your pre-fill inventories. If you didn't have a par stock system before, you just did it visually, now is the time to sit and say, okay, what do I actually have to have every day in the restaurant, and how do I get that ready? Create your orders now, because when you finally get ready, everybody else is going to open around the same time across the state. You need to be ready to put your orders in so you get on that in the queue. And you want to start your production systems and your schedules for how you're going to ramp up. And the time to do that is not 3 days before, but given the grace we have now, sit down with your kitchen staff and say, okay, which stocks can we make now? Which sauces? What can we freeze in advance of opening next week? What kind of products can last? What do we have to make 2 days before, 3 days before, that morning? But you need to have those things in place now. One of the things I think that we've learned, even right now we're on Zoom, one of the things that I've figured out is that you can actually have a virtual office hour, an open door policy. If you have a Zoom account, or it can be in Google, it can be in any of the other kinds of places, what we can start to do is have these Zoom chats. Think of this as a almost like starting a seasonal business. When I was in operations, I worked on Nantucket, I worked on Cape Cod, I worked in Stowe, Vermont, I managed a place in Block Island, all seasonal places. And I also worked in Quincy Market. Even though we were a year-round business, there was a big seasonality to it. When the nice weather hit, Flower Market, Ben Thompson's old restaurant, went from 60 seats to 350 literally overnight. Well, this is a seasonal business we're talking about now. Our new season is just opening. And so you need to be more accessible to your staff. And one of the ways to do this is to set up a private Zoom site, turn it on, and you can mute your video, you can mute your microphone, but make it available to your key staff members so that if they're doing their work in these virtual teams and they have a question, they can immediately go in and join you, and you can have an open door policy even if you're working at home. Do that for an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours a day while you're doing this. You don't have to be with each member of your team all the time, but if you're available as the leader, you can answer questions that come up right away. It can be on the phone, but I think the face-to-face makes a big difference. So sign on, set up a virtual Zoom or Google Meet place. Second thing is we start to need to communicate exactly with our customers. Get ready for that last push. So now is the time to refresh all your customer contact lists. Go back and get every business card you've ever collected. Get every mailing list that you've ever used, and start to put together a communication strategy. This is where the folks on your team that are younger than you might be more valuable to take this over from you. You want to suggest what the message is going to be, but you're going to let them handle the actual work. So you want to be on a typical email. I used Constant Contact back when we had the restaurant. It's even more valuable today. You can set up a newsletter with pictures of the restaurant and highlight some of the things you're doing. But you want to be able to text them. You need phone numbers to text. You want to be able to be on Instagram. You want to be on Facebook. You want to be on WhatsApp. You want to be on Twitter. You want to be on WeChat. All of those things. You might even want to do a TikTok dance. But you're going to need people that can help you with this. And you also want to have a coordinated message blast for this. You want to make sure that this is a time where everything says the same thing at the same time and announces the information that the customers are going to need for when they come to visit you. What is it that you're going to have? What kind of offerings? What kind of safety net is going to be part of you? We'll get into some of those details in a minute. Another thing to do is when you give your teams leadership roles on this, you might want to assign 1 or 2 people just the job of focusing on celebrations. Find out all of the birthdays and celebrations and anniversaries of your past customers. We used to go to a restaurant, my wife and I here in town, on our anniversary every year. We didn't share that information other than the fact that every time we went, I told them it was our anniversary and they made a nice little special dessert. Had they written that down, they could contact me and say, well, we know you missed your anniversary on May 4th, but maybe you'd like to come back now and celebrate with us. The other thing is that we need to rely on the strength of others. 59%, according to one recent survey of customers, say they want disposable menus. If you have not been using disposable menus, but you have some sort of reusable menu in a folder or whatever, it takes time to print them. We used to have disposable menus in Florida. We also had some that were laminated. It would take somewhere around a week to 2 weeks to get those menus printed, because you have to lay them out. You have to do all the work on it. You have to before you can have a menu printed, you have to have the menu designed. You have to talk about what you're going to do. You have 11 days to get printed menus into your restaurants. So all of those things need to be done now. And you want to start this idea of contacting your customers with what your menu is going to look like on your website. Of course, everyone's worried about rent, this negotiate now. I know that when the checkbook gets thin, the easiest thing is to run away from the salesperson at the front door, to not call the bank back, to not talk to your landlord. As hard as it is, I really think that you have to be able to run towards this bad news. And running towards it means that you can address these issues now and say, okay, it's 75 days. I'm not going to be able to help. I know the MRA is sort of one of the things we've talked about is trying to negotiate a 6% of gross sales or revenues as a rent payment until you get back towards full rent. Any kind of contribution you can make is going to be better. Many of the landlords I've talked to have also renegotiated with their own banks to get payments postponed. But you need to talk about it. It's not going to go away. Another surprising thing I found in both restaurants was as we were getting ready to close, customers, regular customers came up to me and said, why didn't you ask? I would have loved to have invested in the restaurant. I would have given you a loan if that was what it took. A promissory note from one or two of your best customers can carry a long way forward. If you have a customer that comes to see you once or twice or 3 times a month, we had one couple in their 80s used to be with us. They were there 30 times in 1 month. They would have given us as much money as we needed. They were both retired, quite well off. If I'd asked him, another restaurant operator that I knew nearby said, I would have loved to have given you money. We believed in what you're doing. We want you back in the community. A small promissory note, a series of them saying we'll pay you back when we can, could solve some of your cash flow problems, but you got to run towards this. That's the financial piece we'll talk about. I created this list, which I know is impossible to read, but I will make it available to anybody that wants it. It's very short. It's what I teach people how to open restaurants. I have a list that goes 9 months back. But here we are with just 72 hours. So the types of things that are here, it's simplistic, but not meant to feel like you're alone. This is stuff that you probably have already done. But what you want to do is start to ramp up. You want to create a phone tree of your employees and your customers to let them know exactly when things are going to happen. You want to get your orders ready to go to bring up to par stock. We already talked about that. You want to get your simplified menus, your pre-prepped items done. But you also need to test your systems. And I know there's been a lot written recently about making sure if your restaurant has not been used for 2 months or even more, make sure that you test the water. Let the water flow because you don't want to have it sitting in the pipes for two months. So start your water. Check your dishwashing systems. If you use a leased system like from Ecolab, make sure all the chemicals are fresh and new, and start doing that because what? You have to wash all the dishes, all the silverware, all the glassware, everything has to be washed because you haven't used it in 2 months. You want to check your CO2 systems. You want to check your hood ducts. This would be a great time to clean your hood duct. This is a good time to start training videos and upgrades. Just like I said, to do the 1 to 2 minute videos to connect with your customers and your employees about what the restaurant looks like. When I was teaching class this spring, I created a 3-minute video on how to catch a bar thief. I made it in my kitchen. I set up a little bar setup. I took my iPad camera and I created a 3-minute training video on bar security. But there's no reason that your chef couldn't set up a video just like on a TV show on a prep for the dish that you're going to have as your signature dish when it comes out, showing how this is going to be prepared. Set up a 2-minute video on hand washing and cleaning of the tables. This is a time to do some training. You want to also check and make sure that your waste systems are up and running, that your cesspool and grease traps have been pumped and cleaned, your uniforms are all clean, that the pest control people have been to the restaurant and sprayed in advance. Think of all the stuff that you normally take for granted. You've got to call your payroll service and make sure they're up and running. In some cases, you might have to reestablish some of your employees' credentials in your payroll system. And then set up all employee meetings, get them ready, and then do the social media. All of these things you need to create now. Refresh packets, new hiring packets. You're going to wind up hiring people because not everybody's going to come back. This is a great time to just create your own checklist. This is just an example of something else. So let's sort of keep moving here. Part 2 is, this is all about rebuilding trust. And I think the part of it is that's important here is that rebuilding trust, what you're doing is you're going to do it in this order. Your employees first, your guests second, and your investors third. In order for us to reopen, we have to build trust with our employees. We have to give them a reason to come back because they know it's been dangerous. Fortunately, I haven't heard of a lot of restaurants being blamed for as a super spreader hotspot. And I think that's because we acted so quickly. We can't let that happen. As the title of this webinar said, you only get to reopen once. Now, I reopened 3 times, but each time it got harder. But it wasn't a health-related thing. That was a hurricane. It was floods. It was people not having any cash, couldn't even get out of their homes. But the trust was easy to build because people really wanted to come back. The good news is that recent polls suggest that over 80% of our customers say they would favor their local restaurants as the places they will return to. And why would that be? Because they trust us. I can't wait to go to the Irish pub around the corner from where I live. I've seen the owners. They're not open. They're not doing takeout or delivery. The minute they're open, I can tell you we're going to go back in for a Guinness because we trust them. And this rebuilding trust is really important to us. So how do we do that? The first thing to keep in mind, a sort of assumptions, is that our employees want to return to a safe place. All right. Our employees want to create an environment of hospitality. We're in this business because we like to be with people. We're kinetic learners. We're kinetic. This is an active business. People are aching to get back to work. And our employees have a strong but cautious desire to serve. They're cautious because they have families at home. They are still worried. They want to make sure that where they go to work is safe. The guests, the customers, have the same basic 3 things. They want to feel safe while they're in our care. They believe they're going to be safe. They think that we are in their best interest. We have to prove it to them. They want to return to experience our hospitality. People like being with us and they want to come back. They enjoy it for the experience, for feeling good, for that sense of celebration. And our guests have a strong but cautious desire to be served. They know they want to come back. They want to make sure that it's not going to be something that puts them at risk. And of course, our investors want to support us as we rebuild that trust. Keep in mind that recent surveys suggest that customers would like to see, about 62% of customers say they would like to have servers with both gloves and masks on for at least the next 60 days after we reopen. 62%. The other group would like either masks or gloves, but almost everybody wants at least one of them. But 2/3 want masks and gloves for an extended period of time. Another 60% or so, 59, 60% say they want disposable menus and disposable utensils. So we have to start to think about what it is that the guests are expecting of us. Those are probably the minimum things, plus the cleaning. So how do we do this for the whole house? How do we explain, how do we make suggested changes? First thing is, I think we need to have a social inspection system. You all know and work with the health department. Everybody is used to the health department. I used to like my health inspectors because I reminded myself and my staff that we ate in our own restaurants and we wanted the food to be safe. So they weren't the adversaries, they were the help. So I think that we need to create our own similar weekly safety inspection, social trust standards. I would post them in the window. I would say things like, we do these things, and put a check and give yourself an A. Maybe we're going to see this come from the government or from a place like the MRA, but for now, post it in your window next to your A sticker from the health department. Tell people it's absolutely transparent. I think the second thing is we need to start to post times of cleaning. I'm old enough to remember when restaurants actually had lunch and dinner schedules. We opened for lunch from 11 to 2 or 2:30. We closed and then we opened again for dinner at 5 to 10 with a downtime in between. When you worked a double shift, it was because you worked a double shift. We also used to close one day of the week. We would close Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday. I don't think that's a bad idea to signal to the customer that we are, in fact, going to use those downtimes to clean the restaurant. A 6-day opening schedule Mondays are cleaning days. They're a day for the restaurant to rest. Everybody thinks very highly of the Chick-fil-A system of being closed on Sunday. You might not like the reasons, but you got to think that there's a reason that they can do this. And if you signal to the customer that, oh, we're going to do a deep cleaning every Monday, we're not going to be open. If you do the same thing and say, but we're going to, between 2 and 5 every day, we clean the entire restaurant. No more continuous service through the entire day. It's a way of signaling to the customer that you're serious about this. One of the things I think is also important is that you need to go through and identify the difference between critical and essential team members. What do I mean by that? Everybody is essential to a restaurant. Some people are more essential than others. I happen to believe that the dishwasher is the only truly essential person on a Saturday night. You can run without a manager, bartender, waiter, cook, but you can't run without a dishwasher. What I'm going to suggest is that you might, if you are big enough to do this, you might want to separate your restaurant into platoons or teams. On the off chance that there is a second wave of infections, you want to be concerned, just as if we had the same thing with E. coli, that if one server or cook gets infected because they bring things in from the outside, that they're working with a platoon that works on alternate schedules so that you don't have to quarantine the entire restaurant staff. You just have to quarantine half of them. If you can't do it for your entire restaurant, you may want to do it for these essential or critical team members, the manager, the owner, the chef. Try to separate so that not everybody is in contact with everybody all the time, so that if something happens, you can still maintain your opening. The idea is also in that window of the social trust inspection, post a public list of your cleaning schedules. Say, we cleaned constantly, so they'll see that you clean the tables every time somebody changes. You might want to say, we don't reset a table for 15 minutes so that the cleaning supplies can really work. You might say, we clean the bathrooms every 30 minutes. We wipe down all surfaces every 60. We vacuum the restaurant every 90 minutes. Post that schedule in a prominent place, just as you would with any of the other things that you want to share. Let people know. Build that trust back. And then I would suggest that we create safety team captains, one for every 6 employees or something, but you need to show that there is somebody, just like on the Bruins, the captain and the associate captains have letters on their uniforms. You need to have a signal that this person is actually not just delegated, but actually has the authority to make a change and is watching everybody else's behavior. Are they changing their gloves? Are they washing their hands? Are they following the procedures? Put together a team of captains to do this. Not unlike the way we used to have a restaurant brigade, like a kitchen brigade, where you had a captain, waiters, servers, busboys, and runners. Go back to the Escoffier system and the Ritz system and make a captain in charge of your safety team and designate them so that people know who they are. Visible cleanliness is cleanliness. It's perception. When we just look at the suggested changes for that are guest-centered, one of the first things that we need to do, of course, is make sanitation visible. I think sanitizing wipes that come with the meal in little packets are a big signal. That way customers know that they're the only ones that use them. Alcohol wipes, they can wipe down the table if they think they have to, but they also get a chance to wipe their hands at the beginning and end of meal. We used to do this with barbecue ribs. We used to do this with anything you ate with your hands. Up the ante, make it a little bit more visible. Give it to them at the beginning and the end of the meal. The social contract, the customer contact tracing, we know this is going to be important going forward to avoid that second wave. No one should be upset by this. This is no different than taking the name and phone number or email of a customer, making a reservation on the phone or online, or even somebody doing a takeout order. Well, you ask for their credit card over the phone. keeping a daily register of the customers when they come in, asking them for nothing more simple than a phone number, an email, and their name, and having it on that date and the time they came in. If something should occur, that contact tracing is going to be very important, and it's going to show that we are again, taking this seriously. I would start a contact tracing list immediately. Depending on the size of the restaurant, you may want to have traffic patterns for the guests, certainly to and from the bathrooms in restaurants that have alleyways. Even a small restaurant can have a circle. We're used to that in supermarkets now. And stores. Make small zones, make small loops so that the customers can follow the way and they know that they're sort of not bumping into people. Helps with the social distancing. Another thing, 80% of customers say they want that 6-foot social distancing enforced when they go to restaurants. Start a reservation or call ahead or next available table system. Some people are suggesting that if the restaurant's too crowded, people wait in their cars. If you have an outside dining space, you can use that, but try to encourage people to go back to reservations, or to at least the call ahead, and we'll seat you at the next available table. I'll have a place for you in 20 minutes. Please show up then. And I think people will appreciate that. In the front of the house, it's going to be very hard to keep social distancing, but you need to do that. One of the things that we can also suggest is change your uniforms. This adds to the cost, I understand. But the days of blue jeans and anybody wearing any kind of polo shirt that they wanted are really hard to justify when you want to show that you've got a clean system. Just like we do with the chefs, where we change their, we launder their uniforms because white makes it look like it's clean. I think you might want to think back to the days of waiters' jackets, aprons, shirts. Cleanliness and white makes a big difference. So if you can afford it, I would go to a laundered uniform of some kind. I think the common use of table condiments, we know that that's been now talked about for the last month and a half. But bring the individual portion control packets with the meal. Don't leave them on the table. Everything has to be brought to the table now. One of the things I think that you might also think about is setting up one-way traffic for the servers themselves, not just for the guests, but for the servers. In this case, I would try to make them as crossover neutral as possible. Try to not have guests and servers interact. We all know that's an issue in many restaurants, especially where they were crowded, but now it's even more important. One of the things, I'm going to show you a quick slide on the next one, is that we don't really think about it, but most bars are set to a fairly standard distance from the back bar to the customer. And the distance protocols and training spaces can be reinforced. We know that the bar attenders are, and bars themselves are not going to be as crowded as they used to be because of social distancing. But we can also reinforce that. There is actually, the distance from the back bar to the customer is about 6 feet. You need to train your bartenders on where to stand when they come there. The last of these front of the house things is I think you also want to go back to this team leadership model. Involve your staff in creating scheduling for 25 or 30%, 50%, 70% of occupancy, or and be transparent about it so that the staff knows who's working when, how many people are going to be on, what their schedules are going to look like, and do it for as long a period as possible. Go out 30 days if you can. If it looks like business is going to be busier, it's going to come back great, well, then you can switch into the next schedule very quickly. But post schedules for what you think the restaurant is going to have to be like, and ask your staff to help you with these schedules. Let them determine some of these staffing levels and who gets to work when, so that it's equitable. So here's that bar thing I was talking about. If you look at this, the bartender's mandatory social distance. Here's a typical cross-section of a bar. Okay, so this is the back bar, this is the front bar right here. And if you look, you'll see that a typical bartender is about, I'm giving him 6 feet. I'm only 5'7", so I'm not typical. But a bartender, if they were 6 foot tall, would be about that height. All right. And if you put the customer standing at the bar, here's the rail, they are literally at 6 feet apart because of the nature of the 42, 24, 6 inches, and another 12 inches here. use that to your advantage. Tell the bartenders that if you've gone to the post office, you know they've been doing this since the social distancing happened. Put a line down on the floor. Say, if you stand here, and if the bartender stands here, you can talk to each other. If you set it up so that people start to realize, don't have the bartenders lean on the bar or come over to this side. Have them always touching their back against the back bar. It's just common sense. So a quick thing for the operations, and I realize we're getting at about the right place for time and questions. In addition to face masks, I would suggest that the kitchen crew and direct food handlers use face shields. Face shields can be full face shields, but there's also a system called a smile shield, which is just on the bottom of their faces. Assign different colored vinyl gloves for different functions. We all know that first responders, especially police, tend to wear black gloves because they show less, but you might have a different color glove for different functions. It reinforces the idea that what you're doing has different levels of risk. Masks and shields are there, keep in mind that they're there to protect the customer from the server or the cook, not the other way around. And so this basic idea of community that I talked about is always there. So we want to show people. After 9/11, we accepted that we were going to have a different kind of travel arrangement. This is now our 9/11. It is going to be different. We don't know what it's going to look like, but we can help now to rebuild the trust. I think one of the ways we do that is post-cleaning protocols for both back of the house and front of the house, make it prominent. And if you have any kind of music or something, have some kind of soft alarm, not a banging alarm, but a certain tune that plays, play Jimmy Buffett every 30 minutes to remind the kitchen and the dining room staff that they need to stop what they're doing and go and change their gloves, change their some of the other things, maybe their masks, but they need to wash their hands. And if they're serving someone, just say, oh, it's my time, I'll be right back, I've got to go wash. No one, not one customer will find that to be offensive. And the last thing on this is to reassign prep cooks and line cooks to do takeout and delivery in separate ways. If you have the space, establish the two lines, but don't have cooks and servers, prep cooks working on the same cross-contamination opportunities. Change the way we assign things. I think that's about a half an hour, so I'm going to stop here. Do we have any questions?
Chris, a couple questions have come in,
Sure.
and I think now's a good time to take them. Going back a little bit, how frequent should we schedule Zoom team meetings, and how do you recommend that we structure them?
That's a great question. A lot of it depends on how big a staff you want to talk to at a time. I use both. I have this on my desktop. I can fit, and my wife meets with a group of women. She also meets with her family, and I've watched the different sizes. On my iPad, I can get 6 people very comfortably. On my screen, I can get 25. Above 25, and I have to start scrolling. I think team meetings need to be what you can fit on whatever device is that you can see everybody. So if it's 9 people, 6 people, or 25 people, it depends on what device you're using. How big is your screen? How often? A lot of it depends on how crucial the meetings are. I like the idea of being an open door. So I would I'd have a special place 4 hours a day where anybody could reach me if they wanted to. I think that you probably, with 11 days left, for your kitchen crew, maybe starting this week, every day. Towards the end, I think they're going to be in constant contact and they're going to start showing up afterwards. I think for your wait staff, this is a great time to start doing training. Identify 1 or 2 of your staff team leaders to start doing training sessions on their own. They don't necessarily have to be with you, but the faster you get them involved, the more likely it is that they're going to be ready to go. So I would probably not more than half an hour. This half-hour format works really well, I think. I wouldn't go much longer than this. 15 minutes works well too.
We've had a number of people that have asked if your slides will be made available. If you wouldn't mind if we shared them. I can say from the MRA that we are recording this and we will post it on our website. But if Chris is comfortable, we'll also link directly to the slides next to the video.
Yeah, and an earlier version of this appeared on my LinkedIn page about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's been shared by 4,000 or 5,000 people. If I put it up as an ebook. I'll gladly make these available.
And then lastly, do you have any recommendations on adding outdoor dining or creative outdoor dining spaces?
I'm hoping that all cities loosen their outdoor dining, especially Boston, which has been very slow to do so. The problem is that it's not going to be a massive change. You're going to get, we had 135 seats inside. We upped it to 150 in Florida by putting 20-something seats outside. I keep thinking back, what would happen now? We had an awning. We had a bunch of deuces and four tops and 1/6. In order to meet social standing, we would probably have to take out 2 of those tables. So I'd have 15 seats outside and 130 formally inside. I did the math, and I probably could have had about 80 the way we were designed. I strongly recommend, if you have the space, yes, do outside dining. If you don't have the space, don't think of it as being the cavalry coming in and going to save your whole day. But where you can get it and how fast, yes. I do think that, and I wrote this to some other people, if the city started thinking of itself as almost following a European model. If anybody's been to Barcelona, there's a special part of the city called Las Ramblas. What they've done, and this is true, if you've been to an airport recently, or not recently, but before the coronavirus, you probably noticed that there was this whole new set of cafes and restaurants in the space in the middle where we used to have walkways. They carved out the middle of the terminals and put in these skinny little bars and restaurants. The idea of using the median strips, and so like in Kenmore Square where the bus station is, there's a bunch of small little greenery spaces. I think restaurants that are in Kenmore Square should get first rights to use those spaces for outside dining. So I think there's going to be a lot more opportunity with outside dining, yes.
Great. And then we have a food flow question. If you have an outdoor patio and the kitchen is on the 2nd floor, how do you recommend the best practice for the food to travel?
Star Trek. I think you should just, no, I think the stairways are always going to be a problem. When I worked in Nantucket, it was a stairway, the kitchen was in the basement. I one time knocked myself out hitting the ceiling with a tray. I think that's going to be a real challenge, and you're just going to, here's a simple thing. Make sure people stay on the right side of the stairway going up and down. And as simple as it sounds, face away from the person that you're walking next to. Just get in the habit of turning your head away from people when you pass them in the hallways or on the pathways. I also think that might be something to train waitstaff to do. Say hello to them and turn your head so you are facing away from them so that they know you're not breathing on their food. But that's the best thing. Space is constrained. You're just going to have to deal with it.
Okay. And last question that we have is, any suggestions on checking employee health conditions daily before their shift?
I think the one that we've seen sort of globally is checking for temperature. And for the cost of a $40 or $50 digital thermometer, at least it gives you part of the system. I think we're going to have an honor system that people tell us whether or not they feel ill or not. I think one of the ways that we can deal with this is maybe not go to a full sick pay system, but if someone comes in or someone tells you they're not feeling well and you have built a trust with them as well, you might want to make some contribution to pay them to not come in. I started in January with my students and told them, because there were 100 kids in a small meeting room, I said, if you wake up and don't feel well, send me an email saying you don't want to come to class today because you feel sick. It's better for all of us. And this is even with the flu when we started in January. they would send me the email and I would write back to them and thank them for not coming to class. I had one student say to me, I was the first professor he'd ever known who thanked him for not coming to class, but because of it, nobody in my classroom got sick. I posted the stuff online. I think you have to figure out what's in your best interest and how you can measure this. You're gonna have to be trusting of your staff. You're gonna have to believe them if they say they're sick. One of the things, or don't feel well, I think the temperature is probably the first line of defense.
Yes, and Attorney Vrontas does mention in a side message that the federal law most likely requires paid sick leave for those with symptoms anyway. So that is something to consider as well as we navigate these waters. Not seeing any other questions in the queue, and being about 45 to 50 minutes has been our presentation. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in today. I want to thank Chris for his knowledge and his expertise and joining us today. And this webinar will be recorded and posted on the MRA website this afternoon and will be available on demand for all people that weren't able to see it. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.